In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about introductions. Introductions are the end goal with all your networking. Why do I say that? If you've read my book, if you've read any of my newsletters, followed any of my content, you know that I would tell people, here's the steps to networking. Start with who you know, reconnect with people, have conversations, listen to them, find ways to help them. And when they ask you how they can help you, you would say, it would be great if you could introduce me to someone you know. You can get a lot more specific than that, but that's what you're asking for. And then that person says yes, they introduce you to someone new, and your network grows. That's networking. That's how it works. And then you meet a new person, you start the process all over again, you continue getting introduced to people, and your network continues to grow. That's a way that you can expand your network without going to events, without cold calling people, with sending spammy emails. That's how you do it. That means that what you're shooting for with all your networking efforts is to get to that introduction. And you're trying to do it in a way that's mutually beneficial and helpful and feels good to everybody involved. When we get to that point, when we're ready to have an introduction, what do? Well, there's a couple things about introductions that we should think about first. And there's really two sides to this. Remember, there's you getting introduced to somebody, which helps your network grow, but you can also introduce people to each other. And that's something you can give in your networking to other people that is, again, you giving to them, they'll want to reciprocate and introduce somebody to you. Understanding how to introduce to people is something that's helpful when you're giving the introduction, because you want that to be effective and you want the people to start off on the right foot. Understanding that helps you understand how it's going to feel when you get introduced to somebody new. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to look at it from two different angles here, because I think it's important to think about how you would do the introduction, and then it will help you when somebody's introducing you to somebody else. I know it's weird to sit here and talk about how to introduce people. That sounds like something everybody who's ever had any social interaction should know. At the same time, I've seen several people kind of, not really do this in a way that makes it feel good or gets the relationship off on the right foot. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Okay, let's walk back through the process of networking again. And let's hypothetically say that I'm networking with my friend Bob. And Bob and I have known each other. We go way back. We used to work with each other. I reached out to Bob. We reconnected because we hadn't talked in a while. I talked to him online with a couple messages. Then we got into having a phone conversation. I was talking to Bob about what he was working on. He told me he had a certain, problem that he was trying to solve at work. It was a problem that I knew somebody who could solve that. And I said, let me introduce you to Susie. And Bob says, great, that's awesome. And this happens all the time. I'll have people who will send me LinkedIn messages and say, hey, I noticed you know so-and-so, will you introduce me to them? And we'll come back to that a little bit later, but it comes all the time. Like, people are trying to get connected to new people. And in this scenario that I just laid out for you, Bob should talk to Susie because Susie has solved the problem Bob's working on. Okay. So it's totally realistic way in which you might connect two people. And this is actually a scenario I talked about in my book, chapter 5 of the Fast and Easy Guide to Networking for Introverts. That's my book. It's usually at the bottom of my newsletter if you're interested in reading it. It's super short. Like, check it out. See how short that is? You could probably read that in like a day or so. And it gives my whole process on how to network. Everything I also talk about in the newsletter. If you'd rather read the first 7 issues of the newsletter, you'll probably get the gist of the book. And, there you go. You have the whole process right there. Okay, back to introductions. So I'm trying to introduce Bob to Susie. Now, first off, I need to set expectations with Bob. And what I need to say to Bob is, I'm willing to introduce you to Susie, but I need to get Susie's permission first. Are you okay if I check with Susie to make sure she's open to new connections? That way, Bob understands I'm trying to help him and I'm trying to connect him. And at the same time, I have to be respectful of my connections. And he's not expecting me to just connect them right away. And this is going to be a sudden thing where he's all of a sudden going to be calling Susie out of the blue. So set the expectations with the person who you're trying to introduce to somebody new. That's just respectful, just good form. Then I need to go connect with Susie. Now, here's the thing. Susie and I may not have talked for a while. And I may reach out to Susie and be like, how are you doing? I may have to have a whole networking conversation with Susie in order to do this. Maybe not. I mean, maybe we're the type of connections where that's not something I have to do, but I at least need to reach back out to her and say, hey, Susie, haven't talked in a while. I would love to talk to you about something, and kind of get into the conversation there. Maybe it's on the phone, doesn't have to be in person. Maybe it's via email. You can do that. But really what I want to get to there is making sure that Susie is open to connecting with new people. Because at some point people are like, hey, I'm really busy. I don't have a lot of time. I'm focused on my own stuff at work. It's going to take me a few weeks. And depending on what Bob needs, Bob may be able to wait a few weeks. Maybe Bob needs some help right now. So I'm going to go to Susie and be like, hey, Susie, I was talking to a friend of mine. He's working on this problem. I know you've solved that problem before. I think you're somebody who would have some insight on that. Would you be open to connecting with him? And if Susie comes back and says, no, I'm too busy right now, then okay, I've got to go back to Bob and be like, I reached out. She's really not open. Let me think of somebody else to connect you with. So again, I'm still trying to help Bob. Most likely, and in most cases, again, unless people have something going on in their lives, Susie's going to come back and be like, yeah, I'd love to connect. That sounds good. At that point, what I do is I say to Susie, okay, great. I'm going to send you both an email or a LinkedIn message and connect you, and then you guys can take it from there. I'll go back to Bob and say, hey, she's open to it. I'm going to send you both a LinkedIn message or an email. You guys can take it from there. And then I send that message or email. I connect both of them. Hey, Bob, Susie's the person I was telling you about to solve this problem. Susie, Bob's the guy I was telling you about who's looking to get this problem solved. I'll let you guys take it from here. There you go. Boom. You made the introduction. Maybe via email, LinkedIn message, however you want to do it. Like I said, the important thing is you set the expectations and you respect both people's time. You respect both people's privacy, if that's the case. You've got to do this from a place of respect. And the reason why I'm telling you how to introduce other people so that you understand what other people might be going through when they try to introduce you to somebody. So the components of this were manage expectations with Bob, manage expectations with the person that you're trying to connect so that they understand you're trying. And also time-wise, you have to say, I'm going to reach out to this person. They may not respond right away. I'll do my best to connect you. And at the same time, if they never respond to me, we might have to go another route. Once those expectations are set, Bob can move on with his life. Bob's not sitting around waiting to hear back from me. He can go on networking and doing other things. And if I feel like I need to help him in other ways, I can do that. Reaching out and asking permission to the other party, Susie, saying, are you open to this? And really letting them make the decision. And if they say no, okay, move on, respect that. If they say yes, make it as simple as possible for these two to meet and get connected and then step out of it. Okay, so let's flip that around. Let's say that you're the person who's trying to meet somebody. You meet with a networking connection and they say, hey, I've got somebody to introduce you to. You go, great, right? So now you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get introduced to someone and that person's going to say, hey, just so you know, I've got to connect with them. Okay, great. Understand that. Be respectful of the person who's trying to help you. You don't have to follow up with them all the time. You don't have to keep pinging back. Now, if you haven't heard from them in a couple of weeks, maybe you say, hey, is this still something you can do? If not, no problem. Let's talk about other ways we can work together. But be respectful of that. The person's trying to help you out. And then when they do come back and they say, hey, I'd like to connect you with my friend. If you're Bob and I'd like to connect you with Susie, you as Bob go, that's great. I would love to. How can I make this as easy as possible for the other person? Okay, remember, that's another piece of this is be easy to help, something I say all the time. If somebody's going to introduce you to their friend or their connection, you want to be as easy to help and as easy to schedule as possible. Be open with your time. Be open with your calendar. If the person can only meet at a certain time, unless you have other commitments that are higher priority with your family or something else going on, make time for that person. They're taking time out of their day to try to connect with you. So make the time to meet with them. Come to that first meeting where you're getting introduced, ready to kind of make a good first impression, to come prepared, come with questions. If you have the problem they're going to solve, give them the background and the detail. Do as much as you can to make it easy for this new connection to help you. Now, new connections, right? If you're getting introduced to somebody to help solve one of your problems, okay, come in and tell them what the problem is. As soon as they maybe give you some advice, right? They've helped you and they've given to you. Find a way to reciprocate. Ask them questions. See what they're working on. See what you can help them with. And I would say this, if you're meeting somebody who's trying to help you with a problem and they say, you should do these 3 things. Step 1, step 2, step 3. This is what worked for me. That's what you should do. Go do it. Give it a shot. You might be sitting there thinking to yourself, well, I don't really think that's going to work. Try it out. Give it a try. Again, be respectful. This person gave you their advice. Try it out. And if you try it and you really try it out and it still doesn't work, okay, but go back to the person and say, hey, I did this, 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 and this. I didn't seem to get the same results. I'm just letting you know. It's not that, what you told me was wrong. I tried this and this is what I found. Now, if you try it and you come up with a different solution, go back and give them your solution. Again, we're trying to go back and forth with people who are helping us and try to find a way to give back to them. That's how I handle introductions and how I think most people should handle them. Where I've seen this go wrong from time to time is people setting unrealistic expectations. As I said, maybe saying I know that person. They'll help you. They can totally help you out. I'm sure they'd be happy to. And then finding out the person's like, I got no time. I can't do anything there. So you come back and you're like, oh, sorry, they can't help you. Or saying that you're going to introduce people and then never following up and doing it. If people do that to you, okay, think what you will of them. Don't be that person who says they're going to do something and doesn't follow through. So if you say you're going to introduce somebody, try it out. And if you send an email to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to connect you with Bob, and you never respond, or you never get a response, right? You never hear back, then go back to Bob and be like, hey, I reached out. I didn't really get a response. I don't know what's going on. I will try again, but I haven't really heard anything. Don't leave somebody hanging there. So those are some just things I think about when I think about making introductions, because how you start off in these new relationships, if you got introduced to somebody and you have that first conversation, that's going to determine a lot about how you continue to have that connection, how that connection grows into potentially a professional relationship. And if somebody's introduced you to somebody, they're basically giving you an endorsement to that other person, saying, I know this person. I think they're a good person that you should know. And they're also kind of putting this other person on the hook too. They're putting a lot on the line to make this introduction. So really be respectful of it, really take advantage of it, really work hard to try to take the advice and see if it's going to work for you. But don't neglect this opportunity, because these introductions are really, if you fumble an introduction, and when that, I mean, you don't show up, or you don't show up well, or, you just are rude. I can't imagine anybody doing that. But if you do anything like that, people aren't going to want to introduce you to new people. Okay. So the way in which you show up and the way in which you connect with these other people that you've been introduced to dictates whether you're going to get more introductions in the past or not. That's the fact. If you're not a good connection, if you're not somebody that they can trust to put together with their other connections, they're going to stop doing it. So really think about this. It's the key. It's the thing you've been working for. It's very important. You want to take advantage of these opportunities. So those are my thoughts on that. Like I said, I've talked about this in other places. Check out the newsletters, check out the book. If you have questions, please reach out to me via email, in the comments of this video, comments of the newsletter. I'm here to help. If something's not working, I would love to hear what's going on and help you out and try to strategize on that. That's it. Have a great week. Go out and meet some interesting people.